Well, hey there, my name's Doug, and you most likely have no idea who I am, and that's okay. Um, in the book of Revelations, it talks about overcoming the enemy by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. And so today I wanted to share a little bit about my testimony with you. Um, if you stick around and you like what you hear, I'd ask that you maybe would like and subscribe. I'm toying with the idea of expanding a social media outreach to try to reach, other people that's like me, somebody that spent most of their life broken and lost and just without hope and living in despair, and then not only saved but also reconciled to be made right with Christ. And um, so I just wanted to share a little bit about who I am. Um, I'm currently a youth director at our church. I have been in the service of the Lord for about 10 years now. Did a bus ministry for the better part of that, all the way up until COVID hit. And obviously, when COVID hit, that kind of changed the dynamics of how churches operate. And so I'm trying to change with it. And during that whole process, I'm 40 years old, and I really don't have a tech bone in my body, but I have a huge heart for those that are lost, hurting, and broken. And um, so I would like to um, be able to expand my reach to those out there that may need to hear, encouraging words. And um, so anyway, I digress, right? Let me just get back on track here. That's kind of who I am too, though, right? I'm like a ping pong ball. Sometimes I go this way and I go that way, but basically, it's always in the direction of the Lord. Um, so by the time I was about 14 years old, I really began toying with drugs, and there was uh, no quit for me, right? I dealt with some things in my life that kind of set me on a downward spiral, and so I feel that empty void like millions of other people out there do, with a substance. And at first it was fun, it took away the memories and the things that I didn't want to really think about who I was, and some things. But ultimately, just like the same millions of people out there that ran into the arms of, a substance to fulfill them, um, it entangled them and entrapped them in a hopeless despair. And so for about 15 years, I went down that path. It started. I went to prison, and straight out of high school, I got caught with a gun in my pocket, and this was about the time that all the school shootings started. So they wanted to make an example out of me, even though I had never really had a record or anything like that to say. So they sent me to prison. So while all my friends were walking across the stage graduating, um, I was sitting in TDC Whites, and if you don't know what that is, that's Texas Department of Criminal Justice. The Whites, it was the outfit that they give you. But so I was sitting there, 18 years old, and terrified about what was fixing to happen to me in my life, and you know, so. But I went through that process, and while I was there, I met a guy that was in and I'm going to refrain from using any specific, terminology or names on in any of these things, but I met a guy. Let's just call him JD, and he was kind of like a celly, and we kind of housed right near each other, and we got along real well. He really began to um, just kind of open up to me and tell me about what his life was, and where he lived, which was quite a journey, about a 10-hour round trip for me. And so, um, long story long, I got hooked up with him. He wasn't one of those guys that just talked a game when I got out of prison, at like almost 20 years old. Um, I was hooked into a connection that most people would um, could never imagine. I'll just say that. And I didn't know what I was doing, right? I thought I was just having fun and, I was going to be the big guy on the block. So, I started making these round trips and stuff. And it was all well and good. I always had a pocket full of money. I always had notoriety, friends, girls, all the things that surrounded me. But as I progressed down that path, one of my friend's moms introduced me to the needle, and it literally didn't take but one shot to change my whole life. And so I began to really, like, there's a thing of addiction and then there's a thing of addiction, right? And so I'm not discounting your addiction, whatever it may be, if you have one. And so but when I did the shot, it really was something that I had never, I really can't even put words to, but it changed me. And I went from having fun, and I went from having all these things to becoming just a straight up junkie. And so I'm on this roller coaster of life where I kind of went downhill, and then I jumped back up. And when I jump back up, then then I do that shot and I fall to the pits. Well, it just kept going down and down and down from there. I ended up going to prison and rehabs and other things, and throughout my life over the next I'd say 9 years or so, it was a traumatic experience for me. Points of some of which were, one time I even took an attempt on my own life, and had a 5-hour blackout where I didn't remember anything I did. I ended up in jail on that one too. And but the weird thing was, when I went to jail, right before I went to jail, I had an experience, and it really changed my perspective on God. And I really haven't ever been able to shake away from it. I picked up a homeless guy, and we were driving, and I was really high, and he said, he was talking to me about God and angels and all these other things, and I was making fun of him. He was homeless. He was dirty. He stunk. He looked crazy. He had wild eyes and crazy hair, And I guess I'm thinking because, I'm dressed nice and, whatever, that I was better than him. Maybe you can relate to that. But anyway. But whenever I dropped him off, we started talking about God. I was like, man, I got to get rid of this guy, And so I ended up stopping at the store, and I said, man, this is as far as I can take you, brother. And he's like, he just stops and he looks at me, and he gives me this cold look right in my face, and I mean, like, just as normal as could be. He went from this crazy guy to just, I mean, it's hard to explain. Really, I can't explain it. You would have had to have been there to see the shift. But he looks at me and he says, I can tell that you're having a hard time. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pray, and I'm going to have my angels protect you. And I thought, okay, dude, right? Sure thing. Appreciate that. So I drop him off and I go. And a couple of days later, I mean, things went downhill really fast. I had stopped using the needle at that time for a small period of time, but I got back on it and got really depressed. And that's when I decided to end it. And I'm not going to go into all that. Just to say this, that when I woke up and I was in jail and I sobered up, there was something that kept tapping me on the heart about that encounter. I don't know what it is. It was, it was what it was. But I still to this day haven't been able to let it go. When I was in my blackout, I was running up a street, up a highway, and I was in Marshall, Texas, and I was running, and I don't remember this at all. All I remember was like a giant swoosh that just like wind, and I mean that's really all I can remember. And it was a little bit before I came to, and the cops come upon me and they beat me up, and all that other stuff. Like, I'm not saying that. Look, I deserved it, okay? All right. So, but the point is that when I got out of jail and I was sitting in the city jail because I had to sit out some warrants, I was sitting there and I was handcuffed to this bar. And every cop that came in there, and I had only lived there for 6 months, every cop that had come through there looked at me and they just laughed. I mean, they just shook their head and laughed because, well, let's just say I didn't go easily, okay? I made quite a spectacle. And, but they laughed at me and I was just like, whatever, But I had picked up a Bible while I was in jail. And I began reading. And that was where God really began speaking to me. And so I'm sitting there and this cop comes in, they're looking for my paperwork. They can't find my paperwork. And he kind of looks at me, but he was different. He looked at me with like a sad look. And he started to walk to the door, and he grabbed the doorknob, and he started to open the door, and he stopped. And he turned around, and he closed the door, and he looked at me. And he said, "Hey, man, how you doing?" I'm like, whatever. I'm all right. How you doing? Just kind of killing a conversation with him, I guess. And he says, "You don't remember me, do you?" And I said, "No, sir, I don't remember you." And he said, "Yeah, you were in a really bad state." He said, "Do you even know why the cops got called on you?" And I said, no, probably because I was running up the road like an idiot. And he said, "No, the cops got called on you because while you were running up the road, there was an 18-wheeler coming. And the 18-wheeler said that you tried to run right in front of him and that he missed you by inches. That it's a miracle that you didn't get run over." And that stopped me in my tracks, because whether or not I realized that I was that close to death or not did not remove the fact that I was that close to death. And I had a son that wasn't very old, a few months old, wasn't a great dad. But I knew there had to be more, that I had to change my life for him. And unfortunately, I didn't just turn everything around. I wish that's where this story ended. I'm not going to go through a huge ordeal. This is just an introduction kind of to who I am. So that as I go forward with my videos and begin to share more about my life, real life, just God, that you'll know a little bit about who I am and where I come from. But for ever since then, I have to wonder about that scripture that talks about be careful how you treat people, because you never know when you're entertaining an angel. Now, whether the homeless guy was an angel or not, I don't know. I'm not standing before you telling you he is. I'm not one of those people either. But what I will tell you is that I believe with all my heart that God put that man in my life. And that if God could put that man, a homeless man that didn't have anything, in my life, whether he's an angel or just my angel, to stop and make me think, to look at me and tell me, I can see you're having a hard time. I'm going to pray for you. If God can use somebody like that, well, he can use me. So I began to unfold a series of events in my life that was just the first. There were many to follow. I cleaned up for a little while and ended up relapsing, going back down that rabbit hole. But that moment opened my eyes to the reality that there may be more to this thing called life that we understand. And so a few years later, when I was truly at the end of my rope, God put people in my path that it was completely obvious that God was putting people in my path, to the point that I couldn't ignore it. And so I picked up my Bible, okay? And it was a Bible I got from one of my friends that had it in the county jail. It was a little Gideon Bible, even had the name written in there, right? And in that Bible, I began to just read. I would open it up and I would look down, and something would pop out at me. I would circle it, you know. And I'm fixing to read one of those scriptures to you right now. This was just one of them, that many Bible verses that God began to use to speak to me. And one of them is it's Romans chapter 3, chapters 3 verses 9 through 18. And it says, "What then? Are we any better off? Not at all. For we have already charged both Jew and Gentiles are all under sin. There is no one righteous, not even one. There is no one who understands. There's no one who seeks God. All have turned away. All alike have become worthless. There is no one who does what is good, not even one. Their throat is an open grave. They deceive with their tongues. Viper's venom is under their lips. Their mouth is full of cursing and bitterness. Their feet are swift to shed blood. Ruin and wretchedness are in their paths, and the path of peace they have not known. There is no fear of God before their eyes." Now, that was just one of the many things that spoke to me personally. Because that was me, in a nutshell. That's exactly who I am, or was. And so, I guess I'll end this here so that I can keep this somewhat short. I know that it's just a natural law of, right, technology that people are, if you get 20 minutes of their attention, you're doing really good. And I'm getting close to that mark. But I'd like to do more of this. I would love to share my heart with you, to just love on you, right? Pray for you. So if you have a prayer request, you have somebody that you want to really pray for you, put it in the comments, like and subscribe, so that I can begin to build more of a network of reaching out to those who need Jesus, right? Which we all need Jesus, but I have this heart for just people in despair, and I know the world's full of them right now. So if you're struggling with feeling the weight of the world on your shoulders, I would encourage you to pick up God's Word. Pick it up. Give it a shot. Plug in somewhere. And Don't be ashamed to admit that you need Jesus, because we all do. And don't fix yourself before you come to Him, because the Bible doesn't say, come to me all who are perfect and taken care of and has everything in place. It says, come to me all who are weary and heavy laden. I will give you rest. For my burden, my yoke is light. Right? So, I love you guys, whether I know you or not. And I pray that, that maybe, just maybe, God put me in your path today to hear something that you needed to hear. God bless you.